I'm crying, hey, you can have anything that you think. Well, you can have all you want if you got the money in the bank.
Now, I've discussed a little bit what happens when the number of dollars making up a country's total supply of dollars is increased, and that is that prices rise, all other things being held constant. Well, let's look at things from a slightly different perspective. Let's imagine that we don't change the number of dollars at all. We hold it absolutely constant. So we're imagining a situation in which the Bank of Canada or the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England are not issuing any additional dollars. They're keeping the number of banknotes steady, unchanged. And for some reason or another, the banks themselves are not issuing any additional credit, and they're not canceling any either. So just in this hypothetical, the number of dollars is being held constant. Now imagine that through inventions and the creation of new copyrighted works and new designs and new scientific discoveries and genetic discoveries, we improve the wealth of the nation. So we increase the productivity of the nation by increasing the number of valuable things that are available for purchase, to increase the value of those things, the number of those things, to decrease the cost at which they're produced, etc. In other words, to increase the size of the economy, or to improve productivity, in other words. Well, what is the effect of a growing economy when the number of dollars remains unchanged, or the number of pounds in the case of England? What is the effect of an increase in the economy, an increase in the size of the economy, an increase in productivity? Well, the effect is that there are more goods and services available for purchase, but the number of dollars, that are available to purchase them has not changed, and therefore, assuming that the velocity of money remains constant, and we're going to make that assumption for the purposes of this video, then what will happen is that the prices of goods and services will be lower than they otherwise would have been had the number of dollars increased along with the size of the economy. In other words, if the economy grows but the money supply does not grow, then the result is that the prices of goods and services will be lower than they otherwise would have been had the economic growth not occurred. Okay, so if there's no economic growth, prices on average will remain the same, but if the economy grows and the money supply remains constant, then the prices of goods and services overall will decrease. Now let's return to the example of the counterfeiter, which I gave in episode 3. The counterfeiter's crime is to devalue dollars by creating additional dollars. With every additional dollar he adds to the money supply, he tears away some of the value of the money in your pocket. And that value goes into the dollars that he's creating. In other words, he takes value out of your pocket and puts it in his own. Now imagine that you have $1 in your pocket, and that it buys a 50-cent chocolate bar and a 50-cent can of pop. Now imagine that there's an increase in productivity in the economy. The economy grows, there's a greater number of goods and services available for purchase, they're better services, they cost less to make, and etc. And there's more of them. Well, that will put downward pressure on the price of a chocolate bar and of a can of pop. So let's say, just for the sake of being imprecise but succinct, that the economy has doubled in size, but that the money supply has remained the same. Well, then we might expect that instead of paying 50 cents for a can of pop and 50 cents for a chocolate bar, you're instead paying 25 cents for a can of pop and 25 cents for a chocolate bar. And let's imagine that while the economy is doubling in size, he's doubling the number of dollars in circulation, from $100 to $200. Well, what will be the effect of him having done that on the price of a can of pop and a chocolate bar? Well, we know that if the money supply had not changed, if he had not introduced that $100 to the money supply, that extra $100, we know that the cost of a chocolate bar, or the price of a chocolate bar, would have gone down to 25 cents, and the price of a can of pop would have gone down to 25 cents. So, in other words, the prices of pop and chocolate bars would have decreased by 50%. However, because he has doubled the money supply, he has offset that decrease by devaluing the dollar proportionately. In other words, yes, a chocolate bar has decreased in price from 50 cents down to 25 at yesterday's dollars. But since the counterfeiter has added an extra $100 to the $100 that were in existence prior, there's really no change in the ratio between the number of dollars in circulation and the prices of the goods. So if you double the money supply while the economy is doubling in size, then there will be no net change in prices of chocolate bars and pop. A chocolate bar will still be 50 cents, a can of pop will still be 50 cents. So let's return to the crime of counterfeiting and ask ourselves whether the person who created those additional dollars is still a counterfeiter. Remember, counterfeiting was about stealing value out of the pockets of somebody else so that you can gain personally. So the counterfeiter, by doubling the money supply, halves the value of the money that's in other people's pockets and bank accounts and wages, and therefore transfers wealth from their pockets and their bank accounts and their wages to himself. And so the crime of counterfeiting is that unauthorized transfer of wealth from others to the counterfeiter. And one might argue, well, since, you're still able to buy a can of pop for 50 cents and a chocolate bar for 50 cents because the economy doubled and at the same time the counterfeiter added $100 to the money supply and doubled the money supply. Hey, no harm, no foul. You can buy just as much with your $1 in your pocket as you used to be able to buy with the $1 in your pocket. But look at the intellectual sleight of hand that's just been played. Had the counterfeiter not introduced an extra $100 to the money supply, you would now have been able to buy 2 chocolate bars and 2 cans of pop for the same amount of money that would have bought you only 1 can of pop and 1 chocolate bar before the doubling of the economy, before all of the productivity doubled. Okay? So what has happened? Well, the counterfeiter, by doubling the money supply, has reaped 100% of the benefit of that economic growth. The accrual in the value of the money that would have been in your pocket, in your savings account, in your wages, the doubling of the value, the purchasing power of those dollars, the doubling of the purchasing power of your wages, of your savings, of the money in your pocket, that doubling has been prevented because the counterfeiter has doubled the money supply. So where did all that value go, that real wealth that was generated when the productivity of the economy was doubled? Where did all that extra wealth go? Well, it went to the counterfeiter who created all the money that doubled the money supply, and he created enough money to soak up, if you will, all of that additional real wealth that was in the economy. In a sense, he monetized the 100% increase in wealth that was caused by a 100% increase in productivity. So he did still steal from you, but he stole from you an accrual, an increase in the value of your savings, in the value of your wages, in the purchasing power of your wages and savings. That's what he steals from you. So yes, he still has stolen value. The counterfeiter has still committed an act of counterfeit. He has still transferred value from your money, from your savings, from your wages to himself. And it's just illusory that nothing's happened. He's done it in such a sneaky way as to time it at just the right rate, in just the right time, so as to prevent you from noticing that he's stealing value from you. In other words, by making sure that you can still buy 1 chocolate bar and 1 can of pop with $1, you don't notice what you never had in the first place. In other words, that accrual, having never made its way to your savings or your wages, is never missed. He knows that you won't miss what you never realized you had. And that is the most evil form of theft of all. The theft that you never even realize happened. You don't even realize how relatively poor you are, because you don't realize what you would have had the theft never occurred. Now, another thing that often gets asked is, well, then as the economy grows, don't you need a greater number of dollars? I mean, there's more trades going on. There are more things being bought and sold. Don't you need more dollars because there's all those, extra goods and services? Well, no. And the simple reason is that you can divide any amount of money into any number of pieces. Let's just say that things kept getting more and more productive, and that eventually you got to a point at which a can of Coke had a price of less than 1 penny, or was about to have a price less than 1 penny, but that the lowest denomination the government had issued for its money supply was 1 penny. Well, if the actual price that people are willing to pay for a can of Coke is half a penny, so in other words, when they go to the store they're buying 2 Cokes for a penny, then they're going to stop putting 1 penny pieces into Coke machines, aren't they? And they're not going to buy a can of Coke for a penny because they know at the corner store they can get 2 cans of Coke for a penny. And that's just too much of a difference for them to justify buying one at the machine. Well, if that happens, that's no big deal. The government merely needs to replace some of the money supply with half-cent pieces. In other words, you can take the existing money supply and divide it down into any number of smaller denominations. You can keep decreasing the denominations so that you have small enough pieces with which to buy goods and services as they decrease in price. You do not need to increase the number of dollars as the number of goods and services, or the quantity of goods and services, or the productivity of the economy increases. There's no practical need to increase the number of dollars simply to ensure that you have an ability to pay for things that are cheaper and cheaper. That's just nonsense.
Well, you can have all you want if you got the money in the bank.